North Node in Cancer and in the 4th house. Introduction. With your North Node in Cancer in the 4th house, your North Node is doubled down in the house ruled by its same sign. This means that what you have mastered in the past you have overdone to an extreme, and it may be, or may have been, if you are further along your journey, more difficult for you than most to balance work and home life and to be emotionally nurturing and vulnerable. If you have personal planets in water signs, this may come more naturally to you, but depending on your specific chart, it could be more challenging. Having your North Node in Cancer in the 4th house means your South Node is in Capricorn in the 10th house. The sign, Cancer, of your North Node signifies the qualities you need to develop, but the house, 4th house, indicates in what area of life you most need to express them. Likewise, the sign, Capricorn, of your South Node signifies the qualities you need to let go, but the house, 10th house, indicates from what area of life you most need to walk away. Qualities to cultivate: empathy, humility, security, selflessness and self-sacrifice, tenderness and sensitivity. Being maternal, in the archetypal sense, vulnerability and intimacy. Emotional self-awareness. Protectiveness, of self and loved ones, forgiveness. Where to cultivate them. Emotions. Vulnerable communication. Family. Psychological foundations and personal past. Home and domestic life. Instinctive behavior. Submissive or nurturing parent/caregiver. Ancestry and cultural heritage. Roots. Nurturing, self and others. Qualities to let go. Need for control. Authority without understanding. Emphasizing the end goal over the process. Excessive responsibility. Invulnerability and inaccessibility. Need for prestige. Taking things too seriously. Emotional coldness. Excessive discipline. Ambition. Where to let go. Career and profession. Life calling. Position in society, social status. Reputation. Material success and accumulation. Public identity, public image, in broader society, as opposed to the first impression upon meeting achievement. Authority figures, including bosses and the dominant parent. Law and government. Legacy. Understanding the responsibility axis. Having the North Node in Cancer in the 4th house places you on the responsibility axis. It is the IC, Emumchueli, foundation, family, MC, midheaven, career, social standing, axis. It's a cardinal axis of independence as well as belonging. You may be nurturing, ambitious, and/or need to be needed. House 4 is ruled by Cancer and the Moon, which governs our emotions and our yin side. Cancer represents the archetypal mother, the nurturer, the caretaker. Capricorn represents the archetypal father, the authority figure, the business person going out to climb the career ladder and bring home the bacon. Capricorn rules House 10 and is associated with Saturn, the planet of restriction, hard work, and discipline. Cancer is the comforting, soft-spoken person who sacrifices their own needs to take care of you. Capricorn is the one who tells you to stop crying and solve your problems pragmatically. Your life path involves balancing being comfortable and private with being out in the world establishing a successful career. Inner peace versus outer action is a major theme of your life. Your karmic classroom is in aligning your personal mission with who you are in the world. The cardinal axes deal with power and projection, so power plays and/or projecting one's shadow onto others are signs of imbalance. With your North Node in the 4th house in Cancer, you need to cultivate compassion and learn how to nurture others, as well as yourself. You've already mastered structure and self-discipline, and you might be a little hard on those around you. You have to accept that we all depend on one another in some way. The notion of a totally separatist independence is an illusion, because everyone is connected. Whenever you have an Earth South Node and a Water North Node, your natural tendency is to be too independent and ignore feelings, your own or others, at the expense of everyone's emotional well-being. You've got to learn to see emotional health as equally important as physical health, and be humble enough to depend on others for support. Let go of the need for independence and to be somebody and instead be part of something bigger than yourself. Responsibility is the central power of this axis, taking responsibility for your house and loved ones. You must see the truth of duty's duality, that you are responsible for your own emotional well-being as well as for your impact on others. This plays out both at home and at work. Like the other cardinal axis of 1/7, this is about the self and its projection out into the world, and the adjustments made in exercising authority in different spheres. Your life lessons come through your family and career, and the degree to which you do or do not sacrifice for your family or your ambitions. The responsibility axis is about flowing within structure, being your own parent, nurture versus discipline, comfort versus challenge, intuition versus logic, intention versus result, attachment versus detachment, negotiating boundaries, security, taking care of both emotional and physical needs, and finding a place for the self in family and in society. This axis is about balancing the private self and public image. Like all astrological axes, it's about balance. It isn't about complete devotion to personal comforts or to worldly ambition, but learning to meet in the middle. It means taking responsibility for one's own needs as well as those of others, including all living beings. It means knowing when to retreat and when to advance. When you master this axis, you will have a healthy sense of duty, security without codependence, and self-worth without self-sacrifice. Ultimately, it is about balance. Perhaps you are already on your way. Your quest, inner security. South Node Capricorn 10th house people are accustomed to achieving security by controlling everything and everyone around them. Their need for control comes from a deep fear that if they're not in control, they're not safe, and that it isn't even safe to be themselves. Of course, others react very badly to the natives' attempts to control them. What they really want is recognition. They want others to validate their contributions so that they feel worthy and accepted, with the subconscious expectation that only once they're accepted will it be safe to be fully themselves. But that's a catch-22, others cannot truly accept them until they take the risk of being authentic and vulnerable. Once they learn to do this, they ironically lose their need for external validation, because through knowing and expressing themselves emotionally, they learn to validate themselves. Your past, strengths, and excesses. Don't worry, you don't have to leave everything about the South Node behind. Again, it's about balance. The trick in balancing out the South Node is to embody the positive aspects while leaving behind the excessive and negative qualities. With a South Node in Capricorn in the 10th house, devoting yourself to your career and achieving a high public status comes naturally to you, but this is not your path this time around. In the past you were likely a leader, an authority, and/or someone who was responsible for others in a material sense. You were strong and intimidating, with a serious attitude and high integrity. You had to grow up fast, you never got to be a child and were always mature for your age. You might come across as bossy and cold. In the past, you weren't allowed to show any weakness or vulnerability, you had to put up a front so you looked strong and in control. You had to be everyone's rock, especially in your family unit. You have spent past lives as authority figures. You were a father, CEO, president, regent, feudal lord, politician, and master craftsperson. Whoever you were the boss. You lived and worked in highly structured environments like hospitals or monasteries, where people had to hide their emotions for the sake of professionalism. You had minimal, if any, experience of family life. Even as a parent you were hardly at home, prioritizing your career and public life over your relationships. You therefore lack an instinctive understanding of interdependence and navigating others' emotions. As a result, you may have been born to such parents in this life. Whatever you did, you were a master and reached the top of your field, even achieving fame. You wouldn't have been famous for doing nothing, and it wouldn't have been the cheap 15 minutes of fame. No, South Node Capricorn 10th house people really earned it. The symbol of Capricorn is the goat because it painstakingly climbs the mountain against impossible odds. These folks have incredible stamina, patience, resilience, and determination to reach their goals. You likely achieved high public status and made a lot of money. You enjoyed luxury and power, and didn't have to worry about other people's feelings because people were so desperate to be around you, albeit for the wrong reasons, usually. Consequently, despite all your external achievements, you ended up deeply unhappy and unfulfilled. Folks of this placement usually bring a depressed emotional nature into this life. They always expect to be disappointed. It is not easy to have a South Node in Capricorn. You likely grew up in a very rigid environment that was not emotionally expressive. One of both parents were likely to be very demanding, with high expectations. The love you received may have been very conditional, and you may have been instilled with the idea that if you don't accomplish great things, your life is worthless. This, of course, is not true. Nevertheless, it can be hard to rid oneself of this toxic inner critic. You weren't allowed to be vulnerable. You and or others in your life saw emotion as weakness, and you likely learned to repress it. Of course, repression only works for so long before those feelings emerge in an uncontrollable way. And you thought you had them under control. Many people with this placement faced serious adversities at a young age. Some had to struggle in a hostile environment and work for every scrap and every penny they got. Others may have brought forth the good karma from past lives to be born wealthy, but to rigid, cold, emotionally unavailable families that set them up for psychological turmoil. Oftentimes, this placement indicates a parentified child, even one who worked to support their parents. No matter what, they were burdened with responsibility at a very young age, and never got the chance to be a kid. It can be hard for them to lighten up and be free and spontaneous. Now, even when things finally start to go well for you, you might not trust it. South Node Capricorn 10th house people are highly disciplined and can easily achieve mastery early on in life. Your practical intelligence knows exactly how to reach a goal, as long as it's something tangible. You're probably a talented organizer, always knowing how to put the pieces together to achieve the dream. However, you probably think the only things worth doing are difficult things, and that if it doesn't suck, it's not worth it. You may have a really tough attitude towards life. You might devalue anything that seems soft to you. In past lives you were trained to repress your feelings, instincts, sexual urges, and sensual pleasure. You mastered abstinence and discipline in order to be at the top of your field. Now even if you do let yourself indulge, you only do so if you can justify it, if you feel like you've sacrificed and earned pleasure. You have an insatiable desire to achieve a lofty, elusive goal, but you are never satisfied once you get there, you just move the goalposts farther ahead. The only way you can keep yourself going sometimes is by thinking of this goal and prioritizing this vague future at the expense of the present. Alternatively, you may have brought into this life the innate wisdom you gained from past lives, that family and relationships are just as, if not more, important than our accomplishments. You likely have a need to be in control and take your responsibilities very seriously. You tend to be rigid and afraid of depending on other people. This leads you to distrust others, and you might struggle to have truly nurturing relationships with those closest to you. You learned early on that the only person you could count on was yourself, and that it was dangerous to trust others. You were always hard on yourself, and also hard on those around you. What these natives may not realize is that others had to make sacrifices for them. Especially in past lives when they achieved high status and wealth, even when they felt like they were achieving their goals on their own, there was usually someone standing behind them, propping them up, cooking their meals, cleaning their house, taking care of their children while they went out into the world and accomplished things. They often take others' self-sacrifices for granted, not valuing labor unless it's paid in cash. You may also be accustomed to distracting or numbing your feelings. If you use work as a distraction from your problems, or head straight to your phone, the internet, alcohol, drugs, or some other addiction, that's a sign that you're neglecting your real feelings. You may have learned to neglect your emotions so much that you still don't know how to pause and reflect on how you really feel about yourself or your life. In the past, you worked hard for external validation, and it paid off. You were able to use others' approval to supplant your own lack of self-regard. But at some point, this stopped working. In this lifetime, these folks are often blocked from achieving their ambitions. Once your efforts stopped paying off, you began to doubt your very worth as a human being. And since you had put all your energy into earning praise, usually professionally, you had nothing else left. You come from many yang energy lifetimes in which you overworked yourself, sometimes to the point of burnout and exhaustion, at the expense of your relationships and psychological health. Beneath this tough exterior is deep insecurity, anxiety, and feelings of unworthiness. These emotions drive the South Node Capricorn 10th house person to do and accomplish a lot in life, pursuing public recognition at the expense of personal relationships and material wealth instead of emotional health. Sometimes, though, they bring into this life an unconscious awareness that they must avoid that path this time. Time for a new tactic. While this strategy worked very well for you in your early life or in past lives, it will now backfire on you. Instead, you need to let go of the impulse to micromanage your own and others' lives, and relax any perfectionistic standards or ambitions. Most importantly, you need to start seeing yourself through your own eyes rather than others and connect emotionally, first to yourself and then to those around you. What you really long for is to connect deeply with others, especially with a close-knit group of people. It might be a biological family or a chosen family. It may be your friends or local community. Regardless, you want the feeling of family. This journey is about stepping out of the public eye and focusing on your personal life in order to regain balance. You may be accustomed to being recognized for your achievements, or, more likely, public recognition may be blocked for you. Remember, the North Node is about stepping out of your comfort zone. In this lifetime, you can't succeed until you let go of any controlling tendencies. Allowing yourself to be vulnerable and finding work-life balance is actually what will help you achieve your goals, both professionally and personally. By developing a secure emotional foundation, you're destined to succeed. Following your own instincts instead of the right path or the tried and true method for success is the only way you'll actually win. In this lifetime, you're learning you can be vulnerable without being attacked or seen as weak. You're here to put your feelings first, seeing your sensitivity as an asset rather than a source of shame or weakness. It's actually by showing your vulnerability that you will show strength and courage, and gain others' respect. You're also here to learn to empathize with others and see that the emotional aspect of human nature is just as, if not more, important than material success. Emotional intelligence is a major key to happiness in this life. Not everything falls under the domain of the intellect. Logic has its limits and you are learning to trust the process of life and go with the flow. Your intuition can serve you much better in this lifetime than logic can. You need to shift your focus from following society's rules to following your heart. Instead of finding security in the world of material and professional success, you're learning to create real emotional security and a sense of belonging within yourself and with your tribe, however you define it. Then you will be able to carry this inner security into any arena of life. Your past, or past lives, is full of ambition, achievement, and outward success, but you've grown too comfortable in the role of high-status workaholic. You must shift focus from work and career to home and family. It can be incredibly healing for you to purchase your own home and/or start a family of your own. It can be your greatest challenge, and your greatest fuel for growth. We naturally resist our North Node because it is uncomfortable, but we need to step out of our comfort zones in order to grow, both psychologically and spiritually. Exploring your past is the key to your present. More than most signs, you must dedicate yourself to uncovering the roots of your psyche, your psychological foundation, family inheritance, cultural heritage, instinctive behavior, sense of security, and connection to the past. This is where most of your karmic baggage lies, and you have likely inherited a lot of ancestral trauma. Exploring and preserving family and cultural traditions can be very healing for you. In the past, you were often alone and you didn't have to answer to anyone or make compromises to accommodate them. Now you're learning you sometimes have to make sacrifices in order to maintain relationships. The truth is that relationships actually scare South Node Capricorn 10th house people. They tend to have a fear of intimacy that leads them to pour all their energy and effort into what they can control, which is their professional life. But it's not set up to work that way in this lifetime. In order to grow, we all have to face our fears, and yours is nurturing fulfilling relationships with those closest to you. In fact, developing healthy relationships with family members can really help you on this journey. It's likely that at some point, you'll have to drop your career to care for a sick family member or have a child, or otherwise be pulled away from your ambitions in order to take responsibility for someone else. This may be extremely difficult and uncomfortable, but it's your path to walk in this lifetime. In fact, you're likely repaying karmic debt from a time when someone else had to give up everything to support you in your career. While you instinctively prize outward, public achievement, you tend to undervalue the much more nuanced and difficult emotional labor that goes on behind closed doors, in people's private lives. That's where the real sweat and sacrifices are made. Now it may be your turn to make them. In fact, it's very common for people with this placement to have accidental pregnancies. Becoming a parent is part of their karmic destiny, and many of their lessons will come through their children. Developing emotional resilience and practicing self-care are also important skills to develop. Your soul wants to explore your emotions on a conscious level instead of repressing them. Cancer is a soft, nurturing, maternal sign that understands the importance of emotional well-being to overall health and functioning of society. We can only work well for so long when we're under undue pressure and stress. Operating from a solid emotional foundation is just as important as having a solid savings account. Cancer is also associated with the moon and thus with the unconscious and irrational. In this lifetime, you're likely plagued by deeply buried fears and feelings that are hard to access, let alone articulate. More than most signs, this placement benefits from psychotherapy. You've spent so much time burying your emotions that they've become very difficult to access without help. Even if you can't afford to see a specialist one-on-one, there are tons of resources available online for you to do the inner work on your own. The North Node Cancer 4th House Workbook contains exercises, journal prompts, references, and more on northnodeSignandHouse.com. Interestingly, the more you uncover your subconscious blocks, let go of stuck emotions, and change your limiting beliefs, the more you'll succeed, both personally and professionally. You'll start to achieve your goals only once you deal with your subconscious. You will never accumulate enough praise, status, and wealth to feel fulfilled. In this lifetime, peace, happiness, and fulfillment will only come from emotional relationships, both your relationship with yourself and your relationships with others. Superficial wealth will always feel empty. North Node Cancer in the 4th house also involves understanding that everyone has their own unique path to walk, and it's better to fail in your own dharma than to succeed in someone else's, because succeeding in someone else's purpose will only backfire on you. This also means releasing judgment, both of oneself and of others. There is no correct or right way to proceed through life, and no two paths should look the same. You're now learning that there's more to life than work, status, and money. Prioritizing family and a healthy, happy home over competition and public recognition is extremely important, and it's actually the key to your success. You must also learn how to nurture yourself, and may need to become a mother to yourself and your inner child. Instead of seeking external validation, you're meant to study and value your inner life. It's essential that you prioritize family in this life. If you don't have your biological or even adoptive family to fall back on, creating your own is the most healing thing you can do for yourself. You likely have a strong reaction to this, either you desperately want to have a family and children or nothing disgusts you more. However you think of family, even if it's just your chosen family of a pet, a partner, a small group of friends, prioritize them. Invest in them. These folks are learning to trust others, a hard ask when their early life probably taught them not to. By embracing the energy of Cancer, you can find fulfillment by nurturing yourself and others, cultivating a safe and harmonious home environment, and developing your emotional intelligence. You're learning to care for others without losing yourself in the process. You're learning to cultivate a sense of belonging, both at home and within yourself. You are also developing empathy, for others and for yourself. You're learning to nurture both yourself and others, to trust your intuition, and to support yourself and your loved ones, especially emotionally. You are here to learn to harness your yin energy. This involves being at peace with simply being, instead of thinking you constantly have to do something in order to be worthy. Worthy of what? We are human beings, not human doings. In this lifetime, you no longer have to earn your right to exist. You are already worthy. Before you begin, I cannot emphasize enough that this process of psychological evolution does not require you to completely abandon your South Node and run willy-nilly into your North Node. When people do this, they often misinterpret their lessons and go off track. For instance, early on I tried to actively cultivate the qualities of my own North Node, but I still had so many habits, good and bad, in excess, from my South Node that I hadn't fully understood or gotten control of yet. Those South Node tendencies actively undermined and inhibited my ability to pursue my North Node, even though I truly believed that's what I was doing. So instead we must first seek to understand our South Node. Every quality, and every sign, has positive and negative manifestations, depending on its context, how it is used, and how evolved the person using it is. For example, with your South Node in Aries, you're incredibly brave, but this courage can also manifest as recklessness. It's not about disowning your courage and hiding in your house so you can never be reckless again. It's about understanding when and how to leverage your bravery. Maybe you don't need to buy that motorcycle or backpack across a country whose language you don't speak, but you do need to use your emotional courage to ask out that cutie you've been seeing at the coffee shop. Even more easily, we can misunderstand the lessons of our North Node, precisely because it is the most foreign to us, unless we have personal planets in the same placement or element, which makes it easier. In your case, someone with a North Node in Libra in the 7th house may think they just need to get into a romantic relationship and prioritize their partner over themselves, but this would be an immature expression of that placement. Instead, waiting and looking for lessons about considering others' needs in the relationships they already have is a healthier and more effective way to start. Then when they encounter someone they're naturally interested in, they'll already have some understanding of how to consider someone else without sacrificing too much of themselves. Of course, this isn't a linear process. We don't check our lessons off one by one on a list until we get to the reward at the end, and we don't simply move from one end of the axis to the other, though I may sometimes write it that way for the sake of clarity. In reality, our life is our best teacher. Our life is constantly bringing us lessons and reflecting our evolutionary stage back to us, showing us what we've mastered and what we still need to learn. Even more important than anything I've written in this book is that you judiciously reflect on how the themes of your nodal axis have manifested in your life specifically and in the people you've encountered, especially when there is a pattern, and there are always patterns. And just because a lesson repeats doesn't mean you didn't get it right the first time. It often means you're now dealing with the same subject at a higher level. Pay attention to your life. Both the South Node and North Node want the same thing, but they approach the desire from opposite perspectives. In the past, we've been pursuing our soul's deepest desire with the approach of the South Node, and the experience of never really getting what we want is what builds the pressure to pursue the North Node. The North Node path does not feel comfortable, safe, or familiar to us. It may even disgust us sometimes. But life will repeatedly deny us our deep desire until we learn and integrate the missing end of the polarity, the North Node we've left underdeveloped. In your case, your instinct to fight and struggle to win only causes you to lose, until you stop competing like an Aries and start collaborating like a Libra. The only way you can win in this life is to create win-win situations where nobody loses, including you. Oftentimes we do not begin to turn towards our North Node until we've truly exhausted the strategies of our South Node. At that point, we have explored all the positive and negative effects of our South Node habits and instincts, and we're able to use them with discernment instead of compulsion. But this point may come only when we feel completely defeated by our life. Exhausted, we're finally forced to try a new strategy, and we end up gaining even more than our deep desire, more than we ever dreamed. The fulfillment of our North Node promise doesn't look like becoming an embodiment of only our North Node, but instead embodying the best qualities of both the South and the North Node. Soft on the inside. Because South Node Capricorn 10th house people feel the weight of the world on their shoulders, they tend to have a very serious attitude and it's hard for them to lighten up. Even as children, they may have taken on too much responsibility, including for at least one of their parents. They are born old and are praised for being mature for their age. But the truth is, they never got to be a kid. Their serious demeanor also makes them seem intimidating and unapproachable. They unintentionally come across as ultra-independent and like they don't want or need other people. The people they do attract end up being social climbers and manipulators trying to ride on their cool coattails. Of course, underneath it all, these folks are human, too. They're just as soft and vulnerable as everyone else, and it can hurt them when others treat them callously just because they seem like they can handle it. Deep down, they long to be close to others and to relate on a genuine level, but they often don't realize they are putting out this cold energy. Then they wonder why no one approaches them. South Node Capricorn 10th house people can never be called lazy. They are hard workers who instinctively forego pleasure and relaxation to work long days and long weeks. They are incredibly reliable, and it's likely they're the ones their bosses count on to get the job done, and get it done right. But now they are learning to take life and themselves less seriously. It's hard for them to let go of this attitude because they truly believe it's what will get them ahead, like they can only succeed through discipline and hard work. But people skills, being warm and approachable, are the real key to their success. When they lighten up and take a more playful, open approach, they can actually do a better job because they're more relaxed and open-minded, and people will like them more, too. South Node Capricorn 10th house people can use their mastery of goal achievement to their advantage by setting the right goals that will help them grow. This means honestly analyzing their fears, knowing and expressing their emotions, putting the ego in its right size and place, practicing empathy and presence, and letting go of the need for control. Great goals for them include authentic connections, trust, real intimacy, providing comfort and support, validating others' feelings, validating themselves, emotional self-awareness, presence and slowing down, and many of the other ideas we've discussed. Look to the North Node Cancer 4th House Workbook for more suggestions and references on northnodesignandhouse.com. Against prestige and toward authenticity. Due to many incarnations of being in the spotlight, South Node Capricorn 10th house people come into this life expecting respect and being very disappointed. They tend to seek external validation and praise, pursuing prestigious roles and accolades, believing that outward achievement is the only way they'll feel worthy and secure in themselves. Of course, this is a recipe for regret. Subconsciously, they are aware of the sacrifices they've made to climb the ladder of achievement and they want their efforts to be acknowledged. What they must learn is that the climb is its own reward. When they use prestige as their North Star, they get off track. You see, prestige is the enemy of true ambition. Prestige is like a siren who lures stalwart sailors off their boats, dooming them to serve on boards and committees and give talks and graduation speeches and write forwards to other people's books. All the time spent pursuing and fulfilling prestigious opportunities is time people don't spend on their real goals, or on their personal fulfillment. In this lifetime, North Node Cancer 4th house people must redefine what is truly worth pursuing. Is it worth it to accumulate great wealth if they have no one to share it with? Is the respect of some random manager more important than the respect of their spouse? The real way they will gain the respect they so desire is by giving it, both to themselves and to other people. When they focus on respecting others, they learn to treat others with care, attention, and empathy. North Node Cancer 4th house people's motivation must be pure. If they're pursuing something for the sake of power or recognition, to be valuable in someone else's eyes, or to gain respect from others, they will either fail or the success won't last. However, when they are motivated by their own emotional fulfillment or the desire to nurture others, the right people will show up to support them and they will experience good fortune. Anything that gives these folks an opportunity to nurture others, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, is a great choice for a career. They can work with food, hospitality, fitness, therapy, teaching, coaching, and anything involving the home, whether they work from home or get involved with real estate, architecture and interior design, or home maintenance and repair. Without the emotional element, they have no eye for their actions and accomplishments. In this lifetime, they're not meant to focus on the what and how of achievement, they're meant to focus on the why, which is always connection. After so many lifetimes of responsibility and accomplishment, they have earned the right to enjoy the benefits and pleasures of being part of the human family. They get to enjoy the fruits of all their efforts. Intrinsic versus instrumental value. These folks are accustomed to deriving their sense of self-worth from their job. Even if they don't consciously get their self-worth from their job per se, they get it from how useful they think they are to others. Either way, they define their value as instrumental. They're only as worthy as the deeds they do, and therefore their value is something they not only have to earn, but constantly maintain. They get caught up in an endless cycle of constantly trying to prove themselves, to society, parents, friends, partners, bosses, some vague sense of others, themselves. This is conditional love. Oftentimes, it's how their caregivers treated them growing up. They were shown love and affection only if they performed. It becomes how they treat themselves and how they treat others around them, so that in turn, they pass their feelings of inadequacy and unworthiness onto others in their life, especially those closest to them. It's not until they deeply understand intrinsic value that they are able to truly express unconditional love, both for others and, with more difficulty, themselves. All life is valuable simply because it exists. It doesn't have to do something in order to be worth something. That is a construct society places on life due primarily to its economic systems. It's not that nature lacks its own ecosystems, but it is free from human judgment. As Shakespeare wrote, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To love others for who they are and not what they do for us marks the difference between immature and mature love. Mature, selfless love involves loving someone for their intrinsic value, admiring their qualities, and being grateful for their mere existence. Immature, selfish love involves loving someone just for their instrumental value, for what they do for us, and viewing the relationship as a form of needs exchange. Selfless love wants the best for the person, even if it means letting go of the relationship. Making a relationship into a mere exchange of needs also ultimately burdens South Node Capricorn 10th house people. Eventually they feel weighed down by the responsibility of fulfilling someone else's needs and maintaining someone else's well-being. It doesn't work for anyone involved. Beneath their need for love and approval is the profound fear that they are not worthy of it. They put so much pressure on their relationships because subconsciously, they're trying to earn the right to be loved. Of course, what they don't realize is that true love is not something we have to earn, it simply is. While relationships are very conditional, if you hit me or cheat on me, I must end the relationship. Real love is unconditional, you broke my heart but I still love you. Learning how to accept true, selfless love is the ultimate karmic lesson for North Node Cancer 4th house people. It requires them to truly view themselves as equal to others and view others as equal to themselves. It requires them to stop looking down on others with judgment and superiority. It requires them to stop trying to control everything and trust that life will bring them the right people at the right time. It requires them to devote themselves to the highest cause of all, love, not the personal, possessive, passionate kind of love but the transcendent, universal love that is the essence of the energy of life itself, flowing effortlessly through all living beings, including them. This is one of the supreme spiritual lessons of life. It's one thing to comprehend it intellectually and another to deeply feel it. As much as possible, North Node Cancer 4th house people must practice actually feeling unconditional love and intrinsic worthiness, both for others and in themselves. Through this practice, they will come to realize that they don't have to fulfill any role or accomplish any goal in order to be worthy. They already are. Perfectionism and maintaining an image. South Node Capricorn 10th house people have a strong work ethic and high standards, but it often backfires on them. First, it backfires when they hold other people to their own high standards. No one can measure up, so the native has the effect of making others feel not good enough. They don't realize sometimes that the goal isn't always worth the effort, or that others don't have the same goal. Certainly they don't always place the same value on it that the South Node Capricorn 10th house person does. When they encounter this difference of opinion, the South Node Capricorn 10th house person often dismisses and invalidates the other person's point of view. As a result, these folks alienate the very people who wanted to help them, and end up pursuing their goals alone. In fact, these folks are prone to losing their temper when others don't conform to their way or the highway. Of course it's better not to lose one's temper if one can help it, but if it does happen, the best thing the North Node Cancer 4th house person can do is come back with an apology once they've cooled down. They must admit that beneath their anger, they are hurt. Showing humility and vulnerability lets others know that they're not made of steel and that they're not so self-righteous that they can't hold themselves accountable. The truth is that everyone has their own way of doing things, and the right way for them to do the job is whatever way works for them. It's not going to be the same for everyone, but as long as they achieve the end result, it shouldn't matter how they get there. Within reason, the end doesn't always justify the means. North Node Cancer 4th house people are so used to feeling responsible for everything that they don't even allow others the opportunity to be responsible. They need to learn to give others a little credit, cut them some slack, and let people do things in a way that makes sense to them. Second, their high standards backfire when they hold themselves up to an impossible ideal. They tend to put an inhuman amount of pressure on themselves, which is ultimately a very stupid self-sabotaging strategy. These folks are the most likely to burn out by working harder instead of smarter, often in order to impress people whose opinions don't even matter. South Node Capricorn 10th house people tend to care more about what their boss thinks of them than what their partner or children think of them. But their boss is the only one who doesn't have a lifelong commitment to them. Deep down, these folks have big egos and a lot of pride, and that's what gets in the way of all their progress. They are too proud to admit when they need help, too proud to admit when their plan isn't working, too proud to take time off to prevent burnout, too proud to tell others how they really feel, too proud to quit even when they know they're sabotaging themselves. On top of that, they project their ego and negativity onto others, blaming others for their own flaws and holding others to their own standards when other people aren't even pursuing the same goal as them. This is how they destroy their relationships, their careers, and themselves. Because they have a strong egoic need for external validation and are also out of touch with their own feelings, South Node Capricorn 10th house people are the ones most at risk of wasting their lives pursuing a career and goals that aren't even authentic to them. If they fail to disentangle their own authentic voice from the ones they've internalized and get in touch with their own emotions, they meet the end of their lives full of regret. Cooperation versus control. In past lives or early in this one, it wasn't just that others depended on the South Node Capricorn 10th house person to make sure the job was done, often whatever needed doing ensured everyone's survival. So these folks bring a serious attitude and need for control into this life for a reason. In the past, they were responsible for everyone else's lives. Because they come from many lifetimes of being in a position of power, South Node Capricorn 10th house people automatically assume responsibility for others and for group projects and start bossing people around. Then they get frustrated when no one follows their orders. The truth is, they never asked for consent in the first place. These folks need to learn that everyone leads themselves and their boundaries must be respected. If they want to be the leader, they have to be elected. When South Node Capricorn 10th house people have a goal, they have direction and purpose. If they don't, then their purpose turns into controlling others. It's therefore essential for them to be clear on what they want to achieve. Their need for control is a major pitfall in their relationships. It's something they do subconsciously and may not even realize when they're doing it. They're always a few steps ahead of the other person, and they're willing to sacrifice their own needs and feelings in order to keep others satisfied and under control. But this is self-sabotage. These folks are learning to cooperate instead of control. Instead of trying to control others, it's essential to put their own house in order. They are too accustomed to letting their own emotions run amok beneath the surface, then running home to their parent or partner, expecting that person to soothe and regulate them emotionally. But this is emotionally irresponsible. It robs them of accountability and drains the people they depend on. Too often these folks bring home the bacon and then kick their feet up, believing that's all it takes to be a good partner or parent. They think only material labor is needed, even if they're just supporting themselves. Then they look outside themselves for emotional fulfillment instead of taking responsibility for their own feelings. But this strategy will only backfire on them in this lifetime. Their partner or friends who they rely on eventually feel drained and have to abandon them out of self-preservation. They need to learn to fulfill themselves emotionally so the burden isn't always on others, who, after all, have their own issues to deal with. It's only once the North Node Cancer 4th house person organizes their psyche and addresses their own emotional problems that others will support them. Passion and intimacy. South Node Capricorn 10th house people don't just try to control others, they have a tremendous capacity for self-control, and they instinctually repress themselves. The moment their passion is aroused, they automatically push it down, often unconsciously. They fear losing control. If someone does manage to earn their trust enough for the South Node Capricorn 10th house person to release their passion, it can overwhelm them because it was repressed for so long. This leaves these folks uniquely vulnerable to that trusted person. Of course, what we fear is also what we need. These natives long deeply for a profound and passionate connection with another person, and nothing else will truly satisfy them. Yet they are always waiting to feel safe before they let themselves go. This is another way they hold themselves back. They will never feel safe enough to truly let go. Instead, they have to have some confidence in their own strength and resilience and take the leap of trust with someone, knowing that even if it goes south, they'll be okay. Deep down, they are looking for someone like themselves, someone strong and reliable. But when they finally do find that person, their need for control kicks in because they're afraid of losing this precious thing they've finally found. Deep down, they don't fully trust the person to stay of their own volition, so they hold back. Of course, this lack of real intimacy combined with their attempts to possess and control the person ultimately push them away. Instead, the North Node Cancer 4th house person needs to practice complete faith, trust that their partner won't abandon them, and more importantly, trust that even if the relationship fails, they'll be okay. Because underneath all this paranoia is a lack of trust in themselves. This is why North Node Cancer 4th house people need to learn to tend to their own emotional needs, so that they don't have to depend on external validation to get their emotional needs met. They have to trust themselves to take care of themselves emotionally, and then to keep that self-promise. Only then will they have the genuine inner security to enter a relationship with full trust and faith, not with a desperate need to control and possess. Ironically, of course, it's only once they learn to do this that others are free to love them and nurture them genuinely and authentically, not because they feel obligated or pressured. South Node Capricorn 10th house folks prioritize having a smooth relationship over having an authentic one. As a result, they prioritize surface-level peace at the expense of moment-to-moment emotional reality. They try to manage their partners in order to control the relationship, but in the process they bypass the whole point of relationship, intimacy. Instead of bringing their authentic selves to the table, they try to play the role of partner, repressing their own needs and feelings in order to control the relationship. Subconsciously, or perhaps consciously, they reason that since they're sacrificing their authentic selves and controlling themselves, the other person ought to do the same for them, play the correct role. Their aim is to create a stable and predictable relationship free of emotional upset. In reality, they're creating an anti-relationship. A successful relationship is one that is truly intimate and authentic, and that comes with all kinds of messy emotional interactions. That's the point, that's how we learn with and through one another, and that's how we achieve intimacy. That's how we truly connect, not by creating some cold, perfect relationship. It's quite likely these folks will attract passionate, even emotionally messy people into their lives. It's their own shadow trying to come out. Because they haven't integrated this shadow, they struggle to contend with the other person's emotional outbursts. Their best bet is to release control and simply be present. Once they bring awareness into the present moment, and simply become a witnesser, without trying to control or invalidate the other person, and tune into their own feelings, they instinctively know what to do. Sometimes they don't have to do anything except be present and witness. If they have an emotional reaction of their own, they must let it out and let it be acknowledged. They are learning not to suppress their feelings for the sake of others. Passion can be their deepest wound or their greatest healer. Overcommitting and sunk cost fallacy. There are few people more devoted and reliable than a South Node Capricorn 10th house person. Once this native commits to a relationship or a goal, they will do absolutely everything in their power, and then some, to keep that commitment. Unfortunately, this can also lead them to ruin. These natives tend to make unnecessary commitments and carry them to an extreme. They make excessive sacrifices. They stay committed even after they realize it's no longer in their own best interest, or even in the other person's. For example, they may commit to a relationship and hang on for years, even decades, after they've fallen out of love with their partner. They never know when to cut their losses, and it leads them to lose far more than necessary, including years of their life. This is the sunk cost fallacy, the cognitive bias that we should continue pouring money, time, or effort into a situation since we've already sunk so much into it already. It's the justification a gambler makes for continuing to gamble, believing that since they've already lost $5,000, betting another $1,000 might somehow magically turn their luck around. This is one way that their emotions get in the way of right action. At some point, they must learn to distinguish between commitment and stubbornness. South Node Capricorn 10th house people also tend to think that if something isn't difficult, then it's not worth doing. They believe that something is only worth having if they have to sacrifice for it, as if it's the sacrifice that makes the thing valuable, not the thing itself. They are so accustomed to having to pay the price for things that to them, everything has a price. They're therefore reluctant to get involved with anything because they expect there to be some hidden fee or catch. Due to so many lifetimes of achievement, sometimes these folks reach their goals effortlessly when they're young. But because success came easily to them, deep down, they don't think they deserve it because it wasn't hard enough, they didn't sacrifice enough. But it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. These folks end up making sacrifices where none were necessary and end up overpaying for everything. Knowing their superhuman ability to commit, South Node Capricorn 10th house people may start to fear making commitments, worrying they'll be trapped once they've made a promise. The idea of breaking a promise is abhorrent to them. Unlike others, their word means something. But beneath their integrity lies a little bit of ego. They're too proud to admit when they've committed to the wrong thing, and they don't want to lose face by quitting. Instead of seeing it as quitting or giving up, North Node Cancer 4th house people need to learn to pivot. They must have the humility to admit when they've given something their best and it just wasn't enough, or that they made the wrong commitment to begin with, or simply that circumstances have changed. They must learn that there is a difference between giving up and gracefully letting go. Process over product. South Node Capricorn 10th house people live for their goals, which always loom over them like fruit over Tantalus, forever out of reach. To them, everything and everyone they encounter falls into two categories: either it helps them towards their goal or it doesn't. Due to a past full of success and achievement, these folks enter life with a strong sense of pride, expecting praise from others. Of course, this is a bottomless pit. They can never get all the praise they need to feel satisfied, so they spend their whole lives chasing one goal after another without ever feeling fulfilled, only disappointed with every achievement. South Node Capricorn 10th house people are overachievers who are never satisfied no matter how much they attain. The truth is that their soul is tired of doing this. They've done it so many times now that they know it won't bring them the fulfillment they desire. They've been there, done that. Now it's the process that will fulfill them, not the product, and to enjoy the process, they have to be present. When they do this, without even realizing it, they will still accomplish more than most. For North Node Cancer 4th house people, the best strategy is to make the process itself the goal. Whether others validate them or not, as long as they stay present with the process and act with integrity, they will be spiritually correct and foster a self-respect that no one can touch, but everyone will see. Another aspect of this strategy is gratitude. Since they are so future-oriented, South Node Capricorn 10th house people fail to appreciate their present. But this is why they're never satisfied. Often they forsake what they have for the possibility of what they could achieve. They tend to live for the dream of someday feeling happy instead of cultivating happiness here and now. Again, they need to slow down and tune into the present moment, really savor and appreciate it, and express genuine gratitude as much and as often as they can. North Node Cancer 4th house people must learn to honor the present moment instead of living solely for the future. It's not that they shouldn't have goals, but that they shouldn't let their goals distract them from the pleasure of reaching them. What helps these natives is to set a goal but to then shift their focus to the process of getting there, and really enjoying every step along the way. Power, boundaries, and vulnerability. South Node Capricorn 10th house people equate power with inaccessibility, especially emotional inaccessibility. Unfortunately, they are dead wrong. Strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the ability to be vulnerable. The reason these folks struggle so much to be vulnerable with others is because they think being vulnerable will give others power over them. But they fail to understand the true source of emotional power, ourselves. Others can only have power over us if we give it to them. They need to realize that true power actually comes through vulnerability. Real strength is the ability to be vulnerable, take a hit, and get back up again. Real power is the ability to take emotional risks without feeling threatened. On the flip side, the biggest sign of fragility and weakness is when someone is defensive and evasive, too fearful to take real emotional risks. Deep down, South Node Capricorn 10th house people long to connect authentically with others and to feel validated. They can't have it both ways. In order to get what they want, they have to be willing to be vulnerable. Of course, it's still good to be discerning about with whom we share ourselves. But South Node Capricorn 10th house folks have taken it to an extreme. They tend to have too strong of defenses, too high of walls. Another big obstacle to South Node Capricorn 10th house people is that they haven't been vulnerable with themselves. These folks are accustomed to hiding their emotions so much that they suppress them. But the feelings are still there, lurking underneath, and the longer they stay there, the more the intensity builds up. Eventually they can have emotional outbursts, talk about losing control. If they really want to be in control of their feelings, they have to get to know them and express them in constructive ways. In fact, losing their temper or having an emotional outburst is often a way for them to avoid their real feelings. Underneath anger, there is always pain. Their temper intimidates the people around them. It's another way of maintaining control. Emotional repression can also lead South Node Capricorn 10th house people to numbness. They are therefore prone to depression, because their life becomes dry and boring, devoid of any real meaning or satisfaction because they don't just suppress their negative emotions, they suppress the positive ones too. But of course, all feelings go hand in hand. We can't experience the positive without the negative, and vice versa. It's important for South Node Capricorn 10th house people to learn to feel their feelings, and especially to feel them without turning them into a goal or some kind of action plan. This gets down to a deeper level of how they approach their emotional life. They think that if a feeling isn't useful, if it isn't a means to an end, then what's the point? What they're learning is that feelings, good or bad, are valuable in and of themselves, that experiencing their emotions is the point. Our feelings aren't just byproducts of events in our lives, but useful information that provides feedback on our actions and relationships. When we experience deep peace and happiness and love, we know we're on track. When we're angry or miserable, we know we're doing something wrong, or that someone isn't right for us. South Node Capricorn 10th house people have very clear boundaries, but as with all emotional matters, they fail to communicate them. Then, naturally, when someone accidentally oversteps, they get angry. And oftentimes, they don't express their frustration to the person directly. Maybe they complain behind that person's back. This is emotional cowardice. In reality, they are afraid of eliciting an emotional reaction from the person, because they don't know how to handle others' feelings, since they haven't practiced with their own feelings. Of course, with this lack of communication, the situation will only continue. Instead, they must learn to say, calmly and confidently, "Hey, you hurt me when you said this." They don't have to justify themselves. And the other person is allowed to be upset if they want to be. That's their emotion to deal with. When they do open up, it's important that they say plainly how they feel, without trying to justify themselves or manipulate the other person. It's enough to say simply, "I felt X when X," not go on a long ramble about all the reasons the other person is wrong. Based on how the person responds, they can discern whether they want to continue the relationship. This is what leads to intimacy. What these folks are learning is that since we are all responsible for our own emotions, no one can invalidate our emotions either. Feelings are personal and we are the authority on our own feelings, so it's not possible for someone to invalidate our feelings unless we allow them to. We cannot give other people that much power and authority over our own emotional reality. We just have to stick up for ourselves when they hurt us, even if they try to invalidate our reaction. Once they learn how to get over their fear and share their feelings with others, North Node Cancer 4th house people come to learn that they're actually some of the best at it. More than any other placement, these folks can help others on a profound level, because once they learn to relate emotionally, they have a unique ability to both nurture and strengthen others. This is the magic of balancing the Cancer-Capricorn axis. These folks bring together the practical strength of Capricorn with the nurturing compassion of Cancer. When others come to them in emotional distress, they're able to both soothe the person and genuinely strengthen them. Once they let themselves be vulnerable, they know just what to say and how to help others. Insensitivity. South Node Capricorn 10th house people are often so focused on leading their team, or family or colleagues, to success that they forget that the most effective person is a happy, healthy person. They tend to take others for granted, treating them as tools to achieve their goals, and forget the humanity at the essence of every being. When we take the time to establish an emotional, interpersonal connection with someone, we not only understand them better but they are also more likely to support us once they feel seen and acknowledged as a unique individual, not a cog in the machine. South Node Capricorn 10th house people tend to see feelings as distractions from getting work done when in reality, feelings must be dealt with in order to get work done. Not everyone can leave their feelings at the door when they walk into the office, and most people can't truly focus on their work until they resolve what's going on inside them. Yet South Node Capricorn 10th house people tend to judge others, and themselves, whenever emotions interfere with results. What they need to learn to see is that there is ultimately no separation between our inner and outer life. It is one unitive process in which external events affect internal feelings, and internal feelings drive external action, creating and fueling events. We do better out in the world when we take care of our inner world first. We have to be before we can do. These folks do best when they take the time to put themselves in others' shoes. For example, when a sibling is late to a family get-together, instead of immediately criticizing them, they could ask their sibling what caused them to be late. When they learn the real reason, they will know whether criticism is an appropriate response, and usually, they'll discover compassion is a better way to handle things. These folks need to beware of invalidating people's emotions, both others and their own. When people learn from experience that the South Node Capricorn 10th house person is only going to invalidate their feelings, they shut down around them, walking on eggshells to avoid arousing their anger. When this happens, these folks have done something to the relationship that is very hard to come back from. They've shown the other person that they're not safe being genuinely themselves. And isn't that just the opposite of what the South Node Capricorn 10th house person wants, both for others and for themselves? These folks hate looking incompetent, but the truth is, they tend to be most incompetent when it comes to emotional topics and turmoil. South Node Capricorn 10th house people can be so fixated on a goal that they ignore everyone's feelings in the process. They're all business and assume that everyone shares the same goal and is willing to do the same things to achieve it. At times their orders may not make sense to people, and they get frustrated having to slow down and explain the steps to others that seem so obvious to them. Then when people get upset, the South Node Capricorn 10th house person feels isolated and confused, wondering what happened. South Node Capricorn 10th house people bring a top-down mentality into this life, and assume they're the ones at the top. What they're learning instead is how to work collaboratively, and that includes asking people for their opinions, ideas, and yes, feelings. This lifetime isn't just about getting the job done, it's about connecting with human beings through the job. Deep down, their insensitivity to others is a result of their trained insensitivity to their own feelings. In reality, they are deeply emotional people with enormous compassion. The problem is that they just don't know how to handle it. That's why they shut down and go cold, even try to control themselves and others in order to eliminate the difficulty of handling both their own and others' emotions. But of course, this repression only leads to bigger problems later on. Through ignoring and suppressing their, and others', feelings, they set themselves up to explode or break down later, or even chart the wrong course because they're not really following their authentic desires. North Node Cancer 4th house people have a profound need to become aware of their own feelings, to express their feelings, and to have their feelings validated. Only then will they know if they're on track or not. The real value of emotional labor. South Node Capricorn 10th house people do not instinctively value emotional or caretaking work. They think it is a distraction and a waste of time, they don't see the value in it. As a result, they don't even notice the great pains that others take to invest and grow emotionally or to connect with and nurture others, including the South Node Capricorn 10th house person. Sometimes, all around them, people are doing real emotional labor, listening to people's problems, remembering birthdays and sending thoughtful gifts, reaching out to a friend who's feeling down, always being the shoulder others cry on, or simply checking in. South Node Capricorn 10th house people do not instinctively value or even notice this work. In past lives, they were out in the world doing and accomplishing things, only to come home and dump all their feelings on their spouse and family. When they blew up and hurt someone, somebody had to come behind them and pick up the pieces. Someone else cleaned the house so they'd have a soothing environment to come home to. Someone else took care of the mundane household tasks so they could save all their energy for their job and just unwind at the end of the day. Someone else was the homemaker. Someone else always had to fix the emotional mess they created. Someone else had to help them regulate their feelings of pain and rage. Someone else was always playing their mother. Now it's the North Node Cancer 4th house person's turn to take on this emotional labor for others. Whether it's words of encouragement, acts of service, small gifts, physical touch, they must learn to speak all the love languages and to see the value in caring for others. This means doing both the practical and the emotional things to ensure the whole human being is nurtured, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. For example, if a South Node Capricorn 10th house person has to take care of an elderly parent, they'll naturally focus on getting them the right doctors, fulfilling their prescriptions on time, and making sure they follow any medical instructions to a T. But what the North Node in Cancer in the 4th house is asking them to do is to think beyond that. Does the parent need something mentally stimulating, like puzzle books or a favorite newspaper? Does a cup of coffee in the morning make their day nicer? Do they like to talk about a sport that the South Node Capricorn 10th house person has absolutely no interest in, but could listen to them talk about it anyway? Does their parent like being asked about any aches, pains, or illnesses they're going through? Does a daily walk make them feel better? Does the occasional family meal comfort them and remind them of their childhood? Do they need help calling or video chatting an old friend once a week? Does a particular anniversary always make them sad? Does a hug cheer them up? There are a lot of ways that people need to feel cared for beyond merely being taken care of. When things go wrong at home, the South Node Capricorn 10th house person's instinct is to retreat to the office. Work becomes their escape. But home is the place of their karmic lessons in this life, and it's where they grow the most. These natives can feel homeless for much of their lives. Even if they stay in the same house, a house isn't automatically a home. We make it a home through the emotional care we take. Although it seems illogical to them, taking the time to build genuine relationships with colleagues and subordinates is also one of the best things they can do for their business. Becoming interested in others' lives and getting to know them helps them invest in the North Node Cancer 4th house person in turn, and can even reduce turnover. Soliciting others' opinions, making them feel heard, can ultimately bring better ideas to the table. One great way to do this is, instead of giving orders, they can present tasks as problems they need help with. People generally enjoy the feeling of usefulness that comes with making a contribution, so it's a win-win. Then, acknowledging and approving others' contributions makes them feel valued, and isn't that what the North Node Cancer 4th house person wants for themselves? When these folks treat others the way they want to be treated, they always win. Others will only respect them when they feel respected. Self-validation. It's true what they say, it's lonely at the top. Often these folks think others don't see who they are or allow them to be themselves. In reality, they're the ones who don't allow others to see them. They pretend not to care what anyone thinks of them when actually, they're too afraid of what others will think. The irony is that the moment they express themselves, they realize they're not alone at all. Even though everyone has different experiences, we all still experience the same emotions throughout our lives. Humanity evolved its emotional repertoire over millions of years of evolution. No emotion is unique to one individual. So when we refuse to be vulnerable, we rob ourselves, and others, of community. It's fair to say that everyone, including North Node Cancer 4th house people, wants to feel secure and be loved for who they really are. Yet these folks make it almost impossible because they don't even have the courage to show anyone who they are. It's so frightening to them, it's like their very survival is being threatened. They can be real loners because it's hard to let others get close, but it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. However, it's harder to be lonely than it is to risk being seen. Real courage is in moving through our fears, not cowering in a corner far away from them. Part of their fear of experiencing their feelings comes from the fear of losing control. South Node Capricorn 10th house people fear that by expressing an emotion, especially a negative emotion, they prolong the feeling. It's true that sometimes our emotions are overpowering, but real emotional release doesn't last more than 20 to 30 minutes. If they can get through that short window of time, they'll feel much better for having let go of their feelings. They have to remember that the loss of emotional control isn't permanent. They are learning to feel their feelings, and through feeling them, let them go. We cannot truly know ourselves until we develop emotional self-awareness. As we begin to release our negative emotions, we begin to move up the emotional scale. See Dr. David Hawkins' scale of consciousness. As we learn to notice our feelings arise instead of invalidating ourselves, we learn about who we authentically are and how life and people actually affect us. Armed with this information, we can learn to make better choices. For example, a South Node Capricorn person might have a long-time close friend who actually makes them feel insecure, but they ignore the insecurity because they've been friends for such a long time. Remember, these folks are very loyal and committed people. But if they pay attention and actually acknowledge how this person makes them feel, they can bring it up. Hey, when you say things like that, it makes me feel insecure. They don't have to attack the person, they just have to state their emotional reality. Then their friend has an opportunity to change and the relationship improves, with an even stronger foundation of intimacy and trust. If the friend doesn't change their behavior, the North Node Cancer 4th house person can let go of the relationship or reduce how much time they spend with the person. But it starts with self-awareness. It starts with acknowledging their feelings. These folks are slowly learning not to invalidate themselves. They are so practiced at invalidating their own feelings that they sometimes let others hurt them, just because they're so numb. There are many resources and journal prompts to help you work on this included in the North Node Cancer 4th house workbook on northnodesignandhouse.com. North Node Cancer 4th house people are learning to consider both their own and others' feelings, thereby building stronger trust, intimacy, and connections. We don't only connect with others intellectually, we connect physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, and sexually, too. These folks tend to keep their connections professional and intellectual, but they must open up and practice other ways of connecting, too. Otherwise they become strategic and manipulative, always thinking of if-then scenarios. If I do this, that will happen, etc. This strategic thinking kills the intimacy and spontaneity in their lives, resulting in cold, calculated, inauthentic interactions. Then they wonder why people leave them, or why they feel unfulfilled in the relationships they do have. This is because in the past, they were in the public eye and held so much responsibility that they had to have sound reasons to justify everything they said and did. They're not used to expressing themselves without considering all the angles and possible consequences and criticisms first. They often didn't have any privacy growing up. However, this is a lifetime in which they no longer have to justify themselves. Now they get to be who they are and share how they feel, even if they don't understand why they feel that way themselves. These folks are learning to be spontaneous by expressing their feelings as they come up. They must not intellectualize or strategize their way out of acting on their feelings. While most people need to think more before they express themselves, North Node Cancer 4th house people actually need to think less. They need to be emotionally authentic. Validating others. Until they have established their own inner emotional security and foundation, South Node Capricorn 10th house people tend to be at the mercy of others' emotions, which they internalize. When someone they care about gets upset, they try to control the emotion by suppressing it or giving unsolicited advice. This invalidates others' feelings just as they've invalidated their own feelings. Instead of trying to fix the problem by providing instant solutions, North Node Cancer 4th house people must learn to stop seeing emotions as problems and instead as information. We evolved emotions as a way of knowing what we want and where our boundaries are. They are not something to be repressed, but something to listen to for valuable insight that can guide us in our life and relationships. When someone comes to the North Node Cancer 4th house person with an emotion, what works better is simply to be there for the other person. Recognizing and accepting others' feelings, and validating and nurturing them, is often a much more effective solution than offering advice. In fact, it's what most people really need most of the time. We can't really give effective advice most of the time because we only know what works for us. Instead of giving advice based on what we would do, we can guide others to listen more deeply to their own emotions, which will usually tell them what they need to know. Our moods are always fluctuating and are part of the ongoing process of self-discovery. What South Node Capricorn 10th house people are learning is to prioritize caring over control. Whenever their intention or reaction is to control the person or situation, they lose. But when they respond with compassion and the desire to understand, they win. It's helpful for them to practice setting an intention for every interaction or relationship so that they know they're coming from a good place. That will benefit both themselves and everyone they come into contact with. It helps North Node Cancer 4th house people to shift their attention away from themselves and towards others. Because they are so dependent on external validation, they can take criticism and rejection extremely personally. This is egoic response. They need to learn to be more objective and to depersonalize situations. It's helpful to put themselves in the other person's shoes and ask all the reasons someone may have responded that way. Maybe they have a sick parent at home, maybe they haven't slept 2 nights in a row. Maybe they're hungry, maybe they have an emotionally demanding child or job. Anything that could make these natives feel inadequate is a huge trigger, but they have to stop themselves from projecting or assuming. Subconsciously, they look down on those who haven't mastered the art of achievement. Their pride and superiority becomes a wall around them that isolates them from others. The way to bridge this gap is to give their strength to others. These folks are actually wonderful consultants who can always advise others on the right strategy to achieve their goals, and helping people builds relationships that give North Node Cancer 4th house people the sense of connection they need. This is what truly fulfills them. The problem only comes when they give unsolicited advice in a way that isn't nurturing or supportive. It's better for these folks to listen, validate the person, and then ask if they want advice or ideas. Then it's appropriate for them to help, and they're the best at it. These folks are so practiced at accomplishing goals that they can see easily how the other person can achieve their dreams, and they also see when others are engaging in self-sabotage. When they focus on being nurturing and supportive, others are much more open to what they have to say. People are open to receiving advice and support once they feel listened to and validated. Empathetic communication. South Node Capricorn 10th house people need to learn how to communicate empathetically, without blaming anyone and without focusing on results or what they're going to gain from the interaction. For example, when they're upset with someone, they can plainly state the facts of what happened and how that event made them feel. Then they can stop talking so the other person can respond. While that person responds, these folks must avoid thinking ahead to all that they want to say. Instead, they must truly be present and listen to the other person. The next thing is to repeat their understanding back to the other person. I interpreted things this way, but I'm hearing you say you had this other experience. This shows the other person that the North Node Cancer 4th house person truly understands their perspective and feelings. If they got it wrong, the other person then has an opportunity to correct the misunderstanding. Through going back and forth like this, the two people can come to a place of mutual understanding from which they can then figure out how best to proceed. This is much better than bulldozing your way over someone's feelings with your idea of what's best. If your idea is truly what's best, you'll get there anyway, only with more agreement and commitment among everyone involved. And if you and your partner don't agree to your idea in the end, it's because it was not in everyone's best interest. This all comes down to establishing trust. In the 5 behaviors of an effective team, the team must establish trust before they can engage in healthy conflict, through which they find a solution to commit to. But no one can commit to a solution until they feel their perspective has been heard, and no one feels safe enough to open up and share their perspective unless they trust the other people involved. This is why establishing trust is so important, and people trust you when they feel you'll truly listen and understand rather than bulldoze them. North Node Cancer 4th house people are learning to slow down their interactions and give their relationships a solid foundation before proceeding. That's the only way to get everyone on board. Often these folks are frustrated that they always have to be the strong one, that they never get to have a bad day or lean on anyone's shoulder. They have to pull their own weight as well as lift everyone else up. But this is ego. They're simply too scared to be vulnerable. Being the strong one is a mask they wear and the excuse they use. What North Node Cancer 4th house people must learn is to accept and appreciate help from others and to not view interdependence as weakness, but as a fact of human existence and survival. Even when they do accept support, they usually overemphasize how little they took from the other person. But the truth is that most people love to help. When people get to help us, it makes them feel useful, valuable, and of service. Refusing others' offers to help actually denies them an opportunity to feel good and useful. Likewise, when South Node Capricorn 10th house people refuse to open up and share their feelings, they're robbing others of the opportunity to understand and support them. For most nodal groups, letting others take care of them is an ego trip, but for South Node Capricorn 10th house people, refusing help is the ego trip. Accepting it requires healthy humility. In fact, when North Node Cancer 4th house people finally do say how they feel, everyone else breathes a sigh of relief. When they responsibly verbalize their feelings in a non-blaming way, they're often not just speaking for themselves, they're saying what everyone wanted to say. When we express ourselves, we give everyone a sense of belonging. South Node Capricorn 10th house people can be pretty cocky, always thinking they already know the best way to do something. They don't listen to others or take anyone's advice, which invalidates whoever's trying to help them. It's very difficult to gain this native's respect, and they still often give it to the wrong people. What this is really about is an unwillingness to accept help. One of their deepest fears is to look incompetent, so they are too proud to ask for the help they need, let alone accept it. Sometimes South Node Capricorn 10th house people would rather fail on their own than succeed with help. That's why they often don't share their goals and plans until they've accomplished them. One of their biggest lessons in this life is to learn to deal with feelings of inadequacy without sabotaging themselves. When they encounter a problem they don't know how to solve, these folks can blow up instead of seeking more information. This happens especially in interpersonal situations. When someone gets emotional around them, they either get angry or push that person away. Instead, they could practice patience and try to understand. Sometimes simply asking questions with the intention of understanding is all they need to do to calm the other person down. This is much better than launching into people with advice that they might not want and which might not be accurate to their situation. North Node Cancer 4th house people must practice understanding before they judge. An unhealthy ego manifests as insecurity and arrogance. A healthy ego manifests as humility and confidence. Establishing inner security and a home base. In order to connect with others emotionally, we have to establish a strong foundation within ourselves, which only comes from connecting with our own emotions. Only from that foundation can we connect with others in a secure, healthy, effective way. But South Node Capricorn 10th house people have spent so many lifetimes receiving external validation and controlling others that they don't know how to build this inner security. This can manifest on the material level through home ownership, which can be incredibly healing for North Node Cancer 4th house people. In fact, these folks have great real estate karma. Homemaking can be an incredibly healing activity for them. Even just doing chores and cleaning their house makes them feel better. Once they have a safe and secure home environment, they're able to go out and interact with the world, knowing they always have a safe place to return to. The same is true of the home they make within themselves. In fact, in the past South Node Capricorn 10th house people have devoted themselves to causes outside themselves. They've always been in search of the next project, they've always had to be on for others, they've never been able to relax because they haven't established a safe home in which to do so. They've spent so much time in the public eye that they haven't gotten to enjoy the privilege of privacy. In fact, they may not feel they belong even in their own families. To change this, they must start by establishing a home within themselves. This comes from getting in touch with and validating their own feelings, as well as developing and trusting their intuition. From there, North Node Cancer 4th house people are able to be vulnerable with others, and through that vulnerability they can truly connect. Then they will start to feel a sense of belonging with others, even their family and those whom they never thought they'd belong with. Of course, it's important to discriminate between those who are and who are not worth their trust. If they take the chance of being vulnerable with someone and that person tries to invalidate them, they know that person is not trustworthy. Sometimes this is harder than it seems though, which is why it's important for North Node Cancer 4th house people to continually check in with their own feelings. When they open up and the other person responds, they need to be aware of how that person's response makes them feel. Based on their own emotional reaction, they can discern whether this is a helpful person to have in their life. These folks are learning that emotions are information. Our feelings give us feedback on our experience and let us know if we're on track or not. It's not that we should never let ourselves experience uncomfortable feelings, but that the discomfort tells us something about ourselves and about what works or doesn't work for us. Our inner security and emotional foundation also includes our psychological roots and family history and heredity. This is often a very sore spot for South Node Capricorn 10th house folks, who tend to have cold parents and tough early lives. Understanding these psychological foundations is essential to their healing, growth, and self-knowledge, though. Whether it's through therapy, journaling, or other forms of self-reflection, it's essential they make the time to understand where they came from. This healing can also come through literally exploring where they came from by learning about the history of their hometown, family, ethnicity, country, traditions, or cultural heritage. Finding ways to bring these practices into the present and carry on a family or cultural tradition can be very fulfilling and give these folks a sense of security and belonging. There are many suggestions in the North Node Cancer 4th house workbook on northnodesignandhouse.com. From leading to nurturing. South Node Capricorn 10th house people are so accustomed to responsibility, organization, and control that they automatically take on a leadership position, especially in a group dynamic or when an emergency strikes. Deep down, they don't have much trust in others to do things correctly, the way they would do them. In fact, they can be micromanagers who always want to know what others are up to, telling them how to do every step of their jobs and lives. When others come to them with a problem, they instinctively give the person advice on what to do or how to dispel their negative emotions. But that might not be what the other person wants or needs. What they're learning is that there's a difference between taking responsibility for others and truly supporting them. They don't realize that when they take responsibility for other people, such as by giving unsolicited advice, rather than helping the person, it disempowers them. Too often these folks rob others of the opportunity to take responsibility for themselves. On top of that, their practical approach often invalidates the other person's emotions, leaving them feeling unacknowledged, unsupported, and sometimes worse than they felt before. Even though they have genuinely good intentions to help the other person, these folks don't realize they're hurting instead of helping. Instead, North Node Cancer 4th house people need to offer nurturing, support, and a listening ear. They need to try a little tenderness. When they listen to others empathetically and focus on validating others' emotions, they actually comfort the person by making them feel seen, heard, and understood. It's only after they do this that they can ask if the person wants advice, and based on the answer they'll know if it's appropriate to offer practical suggestions. In the past, these folks received a lot of support and recognition for their accomplishments. Now it's their turn to support and acknowledge others. The more they support others, the better they will feel, because they will feel truly useful and connected to the people they care about. It can be tremendously fulfilling to help another person reach their potential, and because they have so much wisdom and experience to offer, South Node Capricorn 10th house people are the best ones to do it. In fact, When they learn how to effectively support others in both practical and emotional ways, they are the absolute best people to have in your corner. Nurturing others ultimately nurtures their own spirit. Appreciate the gold. Before we conclude, I want to remind you to appreciate the gold in the shadow of your South Node in Capricorn in the 10th house. With the South Node in Capricorn in the 10th house, you have an enviable ability to accomplish big things. You're not afraid to dream big and work hard, and your perseverance is rarely matched. Obstacles are nothing to you, you just keep going, long after anyone else would have given up. As you do, you change the world we live in. It's no mistake that Serena Williams and Jeff Bezos are among your fellow South Node Capricorn 10th house folks. Both of them did something others considered impossible, kept going when the going got tough, and changed the world we live in. You also bring a level of maturity to this life that can teach others by your mere example. While other people fall apart at the seams, you manage to hold yourself together and take intelligent, strategic, and practical approaches even when it's difficult or even painful to do so. You can certainly teach people a thing or two about boundaries. You also have a strong sense of duty and integrity, again leading by example. You're often the rock in the lives of your loved ones, who know they can always rely on you through this and thin. Your loyalty is admirable and so is your work ethic. You effortlessly raise the standard for everyone around you, and every school or workplace you enter is better for it. Our South Node isn't only about what we get wrong or do to excess, it also includes what we've mastered and can teach to others. No quality is wholly good or bad, but each one has both a light and a dark manifestation. Once we learn how to express our South Node in a healthy way with good boundaries, aware of its dark side, we can reach back for the gold in the shadow and share its light. We can teach others the skills we've mastered, leading by example and helping others learn their Capricornian lessons. Once it is balanced, our South Node also becomes the foundation for our North Node. As with everything, each archetype contains the seed of its opposite, like the yin-yang symbol. It is precisely because South Node Capricorn 10th house people are so committed and have such high integrity that they are able to dutifully nurture their relationships and loved ones step by step, as well as themselves. It is through this balance they can finally experience the connections and belonging for which their soul deeply yearns. Further practice and inquiry. I hope this ebook has been illuminating for you on your personal quest for growth. In all my work, my goal is to help raise the collective level of human consciousness. We are each responsible for doing so, by taking responsibility for our own individual piece of consciousness. With the information I've communicated here, I hope you feel more empowered to take care of your own. I wish to communicate a few more things to look for which may be helpful. First, I didn't just want to dump theory on you. As I wrote these ebooks, I realized there were so many references, books, videos, podcasts, as well as reflection questions and practical actions, that could help you think and problem solve in even more ways, in ways I didn't have the space to delve into in this ebook alone. Conscious of the fact that reading theory is just the tip of the iceberg, I wanted to give you practical ways of applying your new knowledge to your life specifically. That's why I created a workbook for each nodal placement on northnodesignandhouse.com. Recommendations for books, movies, videos, podcasts, and more provide food for thought and explorations of the Cancer 4th house/Capricorn 10th house themes. Journal prompts and activity recommendations lead you off of the screen and into the world, where you can be empowered to make a difference in your own life. Even though this book series on the nodes specific to sign and house is a huge leap forward in the collective project of astrological study, each chart is so completely unique that there are still more factors that may influence your specific experience. For some, the path is easier, for others, it seems to be blocked at every turn. While I don't want to overwhelm you with information, focusing simply on the information above is already an enormous project. If you ever feel blocked or confused, here are a few keys in your chart to consider. First, consider your big three, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, in context of your nodal placement. Ask yourself, why would a soul with these nodal challenges choose a personality with these big three? For example, a North Node Cancer 4th house is most likely to have an Aries Ascendant, and let's say they have a Virgo Sun with a Pisces Moon. With an Aries Ascendant, the midheaven is likely to also be in Capricorn, so the Sunday may be in the 6th house and the Moon may be in the 12th. This person likely had a chaotic or volatile childhood, and in order to survive, they had to develop a strong ego and aggressive facade. but they needed the sensitivity of a Pisces moon to experience the compassion required for Cancer qualities to develop. The Virgo sun indicates a self-sacrificing nature that wants to help and be of service to others, balancing the lofty Piscean moon with earthy practicality. With the midheaven in Capricorn, career is still important to this person. With the strength of their ascendant and south node, they are likely to be a pioneer or thought leader of some kind. Yet the north node indicates the need for compassion and retreat to a safe home base, and the Pisces moon only helps them attune to others. This person is therefore well equipped to balance a compassionate emotional nature with a practical, service-oriented ego that can assert itself in the world. However, too much emphasis on career, especially if the south node is close to the midheaven, can hold them back. They likely won't have to make too much conscious effort to excel, they just have to show up. Second, consider any aspects made to the nodes, less than 4 degrees. You can find plenty of articles online by searching for any relevant aspects, but for the sake of simplicity I will note here that harmonious aspects, trines and sextiles, help, conjunctions challenge, and squares indicate a skipped step, a karmic lesson one completely missed and must redo. In our hypothetical Virgo Pisces chart, let's suppose the Virgo sun trines the south node and sextiles the north node. Remember, an aspect to one end of the nodal axis is simultaneously an aspect to the other end. Because the aspect is harmonious, it likely helps the native learn their nodal lessons more easily. In light of the south node in Capricorn in the 10th house, the Virgo sun indicates that their practicality and work ethic are valuable assets to bring forward from past lives. Third, the rulers of the nodes carry enormous weight. In your case, the south node is ruled by Saturn and the north node is ruled by the moon, which is another reason your nodal lessons play out in work versus family dilemmas. The houses of these planets indicate challenges and opportunities, respectively. For example, let's say our hypothetical Virgo Pisces person has Saturn in Aquarius in the 11th house. In the past, they might have made a name for themselves in the world and achieved their dreams, but did so with a cold, detached, almost inaccessible emotional nature. In this life, they will encounter blocks in 11th house areas of global community, technology, friend groups, and hopes and dreams. Meanwhile, their sensitive Pisces moon is in the 12th house of hidden things, so even more than other North Node Cancer 4th house people, their emotions are hidden in the subconscious, difficult to express openly and outwardly. While they feel deeply, they're extremely repressed, like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Their North Node in Cancer in the 4th is inviting them to dig deep, develop emotional self-awareness and healing, and bring their compassionate and loving inner nature out of the dark. It would be the task of many lifetimes to interpret every possible configuration of Big Three, nodal aspects, and nodal rulers in combination with each nodal placement. It has taken me many years just to write these 144 ebooks on the signs and houses of the nodes. But I hope this example has given you a clue of how to suss out any additional challenges or blocks your particular chart may represent. If you're not sure, I recommend finding an astrologer who specializes in the nodes and can interpret your chart specifically. If and when I am personally available, I will make it known on the website. Famous North Node Cancer 4th House individuals. Learning about the lives and choices of your fellow travelers can help you see both healthy and unhealthy ways of leveraging your South Node wisdom and pursuing your North Node purpose. Note that not everyone below is pursuing their North Node purpose, many have fallen back into their South Node karma. Serena Williams, Jeff Bezos, Pope Benedict XVI, Julian Doré, George Lucas, Robert F. Kennedy, Julian Lennon, Allen Ginsberg, Johannes Brahms, Sammy Davis Jr., Roberto Alagna, Jacqueline Dupre, Geraldine Chaplin, Danny Trejo, Giuseppe Panini, Infanta Elena Duchess of Lugo, Pascal Severn, Penelope Ann Miller, Alessandra Mussolini, Maurice Ronet, Dirk Benedict, Julie London, Egea Macedo, Etienne Bacrot, Willem Belly, Flavia Panetta, Erica Moulet, Hélène Labarrière, Roddy Frame, Ry Red, Linda Davidson, Aureliane Capu, Fritz Kunkel,